If there's anything that this experience has taught me as an educator, it's just this. It's the human factor. When we look at education, everything we do is contingent upon three things: curriculum, assessment, and the human factor, the instructor. And we hit very, very heavy the first two, which is odd because everything we know is it's the human factor that is the biggest determinant. If there's any recommendations I could make to people who have the sort of influence and power that you have to education, it would be just this: to help the people on your teams to get past mistake avoidance. Now, some of you might remember the first time you learned how to drive a stick shift. I remember mine vividly. This was the Toyota Supra. It was owned by a girl who was 2 years my senior and very attractive. And this was how I got her attention. I said, I need to learn how to drive. I was 15 and a half. I've got to learn how to drive a stick. Could you help me out with this? And she fell for it. And so I found myself in a very high-stakes testing situation where I'm sitting next to this young lady, and she's explaining it to me. And she's like, now do it. First time you know exactly what happened. You do it wrong. What happens to a car when you miss shift? You kill it, and it shakes. And from that point forward, all I could think about was making mistakes. And guess how it went from there? It became worse and worse and worse. So how do we help people on our teams in an education setting get past that when we're in a high-stakes situation and everybody seems to be watching us? Give you one more. Via Craigslist, we just acquired a piano in our home. After this, an instrument again. So I started taking piano. Unfortunately for me, some people at our church congregation heard that I can play 3 or 4 hymns. So that made me the backup accompanist. So statistically speaking, I never should have had to play. Inevitably, what happened? 2 people out of town, 1 person sick. So I found myself in church getting ready to drive an entire group. Now, these are hymns that I had practiced, that I'd done again and again and again. But as soon as I got up there, the high-stakes situation hit. And I knew people were counting on me and that I was going to have to drive this group. Anybody want to guess what happened? When I was supposed to hit black keys, I hit white keys. When I was supposed to hit white keys, I hit black keys. My son came up to me. He is a captain and master of the obvious. Came up and said, Dad, that was terrible. I said, I know. And I just waited for what he said next. He said, Dad, even when you make mistakes, you should have just kept going. People were counting on you. And I remember hearing that somewhere before, and I remember saying that to him when he'd get a little frustrated in our piano lessons, where I'd sit and oversee that. So smart young man. How do we help our teams, our educators get past this? We provide them a sandbox. Structured playtime is what we're talking about. You set up any sort of activity. It doesn't have to be the ones I'm going to show you, but any sort of activity where we focus on a collaborative challenge, minimal rules and parameters. The emphasis is on creativity, prototyping, and the mistakes are part of the learning process. In the very bottom, that structured dialogue where they can do what we just did. Pair up, share out. What does that have to do with us? It doesn't matter what activity you follow as long as it looks like that. Okay? This is an activity where we play Angry Birds. We call the staff a day before and say, bring a hard-boiled egg and bring 3 recyclable containers. And what we do is we have them build these containers that look like birds, and we launch them from this giant green slingshot. And they have to protect the egg, and they get points based on how far it goes and what % of the egg is intact. And the emphasis is on, we don't care how many times you try it. We have tons of materials. Just keep trying it different ways and see what you come up with. And at the end, that structured dialogue where you debrief and say, what does that have to do with our own profession?